el grillo è buon cantore che tiene lungo verso. Dale, dale, beve, beve, grillo, grillo, canta, canta, dale, dale, beve, beve, grillo, grillo, canta. El grillo è buon cantore che tiene lungo verso.
Few words evoke such emotion, such passion, such flavor as instant ramen. Although a food only known for its convenience and its low price, some see it for its true worth, its flavor. The truth is, we take instant ramen for granted, with its flavors and its glorious texture. But what makes instant ramen so amazing? Meet Bryce Joseph, a ramen connoisseur and chemist here in the home of ramen, Pacifica. He's here to talk about noodles.
You know, people always ask me why I've dedicated my life's work to understanding the chemistry of instant ramen noodles. And to that, I say, instant ramen noodles are made up of mostly wheat flour and water. The protein quality of the flour affects the noodle's overall elasticity, firmness, and smoothness. This can all be explained by gluten. First of all, what is gluten? Well, in simple terms, gluten is a protein, which is a large molecule made up of many amino acids. Wheat flour contains two naturally occurring proteins, glutenin and gliadin. When sufficient water is added to the wheat flour, these two proteins become able to move around. Hydration, in chemistry, is a chemical reaction where a reacting substance combines with water. Upon adding sufficient water to the wheat flour, the proteins in the wheat flour undergo hydration. As the water and flour mix, the hydrated proteins in the flour begin to interact. They begin to stick to each other through the formation of chemical bonds called crosslinks. These crosslinks create a large network of chemically bonded proteins. This large network of chemically bonded glutenin and gliadin creates gluten, a highly elastic and flexible protein. This is the process behind your average instant noodle.
We've been talking about flexibility this whole time, yet when we receive instant ramen noodles, they're hard and brittle. What happened?
Instant ramen noodles, obviously, are dried when you first get them. They undergo a frying process in which the noodles lose most of their water content and become hard and brittle. When you dump noodles in the oil, you begin to see bubbles at the surface, just like with any other fried food. This isn't actually oil bubbling, this is moisture bubbling off the surface of the food. Now I say surface because the oil is mostly dehydrating the outside of the food, leaving the inside able to retain most of its moisture. This helps in rehydrating the noodles when you cook them. The moisture leaving the noodles causes the outside to become crispy. Eventually, bubbles stop because most of the water content in the noodles are gone. This leaves you with your dried ramen noodle.
As Bryce can attest to, instant ramen is much better cooked. But how does this process occur?
One main factor in the rehydration of instant ramen noodles is called the crystalline starch domain. Starch is a carbohydrate present within instant ramen noodles and many other things. Starch can bond with other molecules to form a more stable, ordered, and crystalline structure. When the crystalline starch structure is heated and dissolved in water, it loses that structure. The melting of the crystalline starch domain requires a certain high temperature, which is why we microwave our instant ramen noodles rather than just letting them sit there in cold water. Simultaneous to this process, water is being taken up into the noodles, which increases their size and restores their moisture. These processes allow for instant ramen noodles to regain their moisture when you just add hot water.
Now we know how the noodles of instant ramen are created. But where does the flavor come from? On this, Bryce is heading to the Japanese tea gardens for inspiration. Bryce decided his quest wasn't worth pursuing. So, we've called in another expert, Bryce Joseph, here to talk about flavor.
MSG is one of the key ingredients in instant ramen. MSG comes from the amino acid glutamic acid. When glutamic acid loses one of its protons, it becomes its anion, glutamate. Glutamate is responsible for the flavor our brain perceives as umami, which is why it is so common in many glutamate flavorings, such as MSG. The main way we taste glutamate's umami flavor is through MSG. This is because, since the glutamate ion is the only thing responsible for the flavor our brain perceives as umami, the starting compound or salt doesn't matter. Therefore, we use monosodium glutamate, a sodium salt derived from glutamic acid. Monosodium glutamate is much easier to dissolve in water than crystalline glutamic acid, which is why it is so prevalent in food manufacturing. Since MSG is responsible for instant ramen's umami flavor, it's no doubt that it's one of the most important ingredients in instant ramen.
Instant ramen noodles. Perhaps the simplest, yet most complex things on the planet. Cheap, yet elegant. Unhealthy, yet delicious. I hope this video inspired within you a deep passion for instant ramen. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But I leave you with a quote. In the words of my boy Gandhi, kinda makes sense,